This video is part of a tutorial to illustrate the use of QCAD. In particular, the way I use QCAD to design a quadcopter. The full tutorial is at Into-FPV, which I've linked below. I'm doing this on a Mac, so your menus might look a little different if you're using Windows or Linux. And this, the quadcopter I will design is going to be very basic, nothing fancy, but hopefully it will give you an idea of how to use QCAD. Now we have the dimensions of all our components, so we'll get started. The first thing you want to do is center the screen. Now this red crosshair is the origin, and I like to center my components on that. So using my middle mouse button or the wheel, press it down, hold it, and drag it to the center. Okay, and you can do that anywhere on the drawing screen, but I just clicked on that. Now we also want to zoom. Notice the dimensions up here. I've only got up to about 50, so it's only 100 millimeters wide. I want to zoom out so that I get about 180 or 200 by, that's good. And you zoom using the mouse wheel by scrolling it. Okay, so now that I've got that centered, the first thing I want to do, notice this says Untitled. Let's go ahead and do a Save As, this icon. And I'm just going to save it as, we'll call this X-Quad. And this is going to be, like I say, a very basic quad based on an X-style frame. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is lay out guidelines for your components so that you'll know where to place the actual components and how to draw the frame. So the first thing I want to do is go over here to my layer list, and you start with one layer and it's called layer 0. Now layer 0, you cannot change the name of it, but I want to change the color. The default drawing color on the black screen is white, and for my guidelines I want to use a different color. So to do that, you come over here to layer 0 and you right click and choose edit layer. Now like I say, we can't rename that, but I can change this to yellow. Okay, say okay. So now whenever I draw in here, my lines will be yellow. So now that I've got my screen ready, I'm going to start laying out some things I know. So the first thing I want to do is consider the propellers. I'm going to use 5-inch propellers, and so I need to be able to accommodate 5-inch propellers and some clearance in between. So 5 inches is 127 millimeters. I'm going to allow for 10 millimeters in between, so that would be 137, or half of 127 plus half of 127 plus 10, so 137. So first thing I'm going to do is come up here to the Polygon Tool, click on that, and I'm going to select, if you highlight over it, notice it says Rectangle with Size. So I'll click on that, and now that's my active tool with some default values. So I want this to be, I'll click in here, and I want that to be 137. You just type that in. I'll tab over 137. Okay, and notice now when I drop my cursor down here, it shows a 137 by 137 rectangle. Also note up here that I've got the reference point is the middle, and that's what I want to do because I want to center this rectangle on that origin. Okay, so notice after I click and place a rectangle, I've still got that rectangle. Okay. Now I could right click and that would dismiss that, but instead of that, I still want to use the rectangle tool. I just want to place some other guidelines for other components. Now the next thing I will do is the flight controller. Now I'm going to use, so I'll come up here, I'm just going to place, so I have the corners for the holes, and those are 30.5 millimeters square. So I'll type in 30.5 and 30.5. And I've still got the reference point as the middle, so I'll go down here and place that at the middle. So that will help me figure out where my flight controller goes. Next is the battery, and the battery is 75 by 35, or 35 by 75 is a typical size. So the width, I'll say 35, and then 75, and I'll place that rectangle here, centered again. Okay, and so now I'm done with my rectangles. I can right click, but I think I'll still go up here and click the reset button so that I have my tool menu back. So the next thing I want to do is to locate where the motors are going to go, and they're going to go at the corners here of this rectangle. So now I will choose the circle tool, and I want this one, which is center radius. And my motors were 27.9 millimeters in diameter. So I'll come up here and type in 27.9, and I'm going to say divided by 2 because I need the radius. And that's a common thing to do with circles, okay? So I'm going to place a circle, and notice when I come over here, it tells me I'm at the intersection, and that's where I click to drop it. Same here, same down here, and the same here. Okay. Now, still using the circle tool, I'm also going to have to locate the screw, mounting screw holes on this, and those are for typical 2204 motor are one opposing pair is 19 millimeters and the other 16 millimeters. So I want to go ahead and place circles to locate those on. So I'll put in here 19 divided by 2, and then I'll go ahead and put those circles within those on the 4 corners. And then I need the other one, which is 16 divided by 2. And I'll place those in there. Okay, I'll right click, and then I want to go up here and reset. Now, one other thing we want to do, since we're making this an X frame, I'd like to see where the X is. So I'm going to use the line tool and just draw diagonals on this outer square. So go to the line tool, and notice you have several options here. I'm just going to use the point to point, a line from 2 points. I'll click on that, and I'll go to this intersection of those 2 lines and draw down here. Okay, now notice when I continue to move my mouse, I've still got a line. So I'm going to right click to dismiss that, and now I'm going to draw a diagonal from this corner to this corner. Okay. And then I'll right click. Now I'm going to reset the tool again. Now, anytime you need to delete or copy something, you need to be on the reset idle tool like this for selection. So now what I want to do is I don't need this outer box anymore. I know I've got the spacing on my propellers correct. Should be 10 millimeters. If you wanted to, you could make a circle of with a radius of 127 divided by 2 and as a guideline for the outer thing of the propeller to make sure you check your clearance. And if you're doing something other than an X design, you might actually want to do that. I know this is going to be right, so I won't do that. What I want to do is I don't need these lines anymore, so I'm going to delete them. Now to delete, you want to select each line, and I can hit delete each time, or if you hold the shift key, you can add to the selection. So I'll add all 4 of these, and then I'll hit my delete key on my keyboard. And now I've got something that actually is starting to look like an X-frame quadcopter. While I've got this done, this is a good time to just save what you're doing. Notice here, this little asterisk means you've made changes that haven't been saved. So once I hit save, that asterisk goes away and I've saved. So if I quit now and come back, I can get back to this same point. Okay? Now that we have our guidelines, we're ready to design the quadcopter around those guidelines. The first thing we need to do is create a new layer for the design. We don't want to draw on the same layer as the guidelines. So you hit this plus button and you create a new layer, and let's call this layer mainframe. Okay, and even though the color says black, on the black background that'll show up as white lines. So we'll just say okay. Now notice that mainframe has to be selected to draw on that layer. If I have the 0 layer selected, that will draw on that layer. So make sure that's selected for mainframe. And we're going to start by creating the pads for the motors. Now, the pads for the motors, I want to create some crash protection, so I'm going to make them the outer edge of this a little larger than the diameter of the motor. We'll say I'll do a 31 millimeter diameter circle for a 27.9 diameter motor. That would give us about 1.5 millimeters all the way around the outside for protection. So we just do the same we did before, and we select circle center radius, and I'm going to choose here, I'll say 31 divided by 2. Now notice I'm on mainframe, and notice since the color was black or white, that'll show up differently, but I can position it by centering it at the end of the diagonal, okay? And I'll do that in all 4 corners. Okay. And notice here, if I want to see just the frame to this point, I can hide the guidelines. Okay, so this is what I've designed so far of the frame. Okay, by clicking on the little eye, that either hides or shows that particular layer. Now let's get that layer back. Okay, and let's say next I want to go ahead and do the arms. Now, there's several ways you can do this. You can freehand it, go from point to point. Maybe you want tapered arms. I'm going to make, like I say, this design is very simple. The main criteria for our arms is they need to be wide enough to hold the ESCs for people who like to strap the ESCs on the arms. Now, our ESCs are 13 millimeters wide. And so I'm going to make my arms a minimum of 14 millimeters wide, okay? Now the tool I'm going to use to create the arms is going to be a line tool. And what I want is the parallel with distance. Now even though I'm drawing on the mainframe layer, I can use guidelines for lines to reference from. So let me select the parallel with distance. And I'm going to make the arms 14 millimeters wide, so I need to go 7 millimeters on either side of this. So this parallel with distance, and I've got it set on auto, which is going to select the length of the segment that it's parallel to, and that's what I want. And I want a distance of 7 millimeters from that. Now you can see if I hover my mouse, it over the line sort of, it'll go to one side or the other, and I want a line on either side, so I hover until it shows up on this side and click. That places a line. Then I move to the other side and click, and that places a line. Now I'll do the same with this line, 7 millimeters on either side. And so now I've got the arms. Let me hide the guidelines. And so there's my arms. I know it's kind of bulky, but that's okay. That illustrates how you can draw lines parallel to some other line on your thing. Okay, like I say, you could freehand, you could now come in and like you could draw a segment line from, say, a point to some point if you wanted tapered arms or something like that. But I'm just trying to keep it simple. Okay, so let me reset here. The next thing I want to do is I need to build out to the frame so I know what size to make the frame. So first of all, I'm going to drill the holes for my flight controller, and remember this box is set as the corners are going to be where the mounting holes are. So I'm going to go ahead and go circle with radius, and I'm going to be making for 3 millimeter hardware, so I'm going to be 3.1 divided by 2. I'm still on the mainframe layer, that's where I'm drawing. I can zoom here. Notice I haven't placed anything yet, I'm just scrolling the middle mouse wheel. And I'm going to place a hole at each corner of this flight controller grid line. Okay, and those will be the mounting points for the flight controller. The next thing we want to do is we got to consider the battery and the battery strap. We'll assume this is a bottom mount battery, just to keep this simple. And I need a slot for the battery strips that are outside the battery. I like to put them where they are exactly outside the battery. And most battery straps are like 2 centimeters wide, 20 millimeters. So I'm going to make a slot that is 21 millimeters long. Now let me reset this. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool again for that. And rectangle with size. Most battery straps are less than 2 millimeters thick, so I'm going to make the width of the slot 2.5 millimeters, and the length is going to be 21. And this time, notice I want to line it up somehow with this so that it's all outside the battery. Now, it'll be easier where instead of placing it from the middle of the rectangle, I can actually place it from the right or left. So I'm going to call it right. And if you notice, I'm in the center of the right-hand side of the slot. And that's good. Now notice I've got my grid lines here. I also want it centered vertically. But notice it says grid, so I'm on the grid. And I want it right there at the edge of the battery guideline. So I'll click, and then that places it there. Now, I want one on the other side, so I'll need to change this to left, and then I'll do the same thing on that side. Okay, place it there. And that takes care of the battery slots. Now, I've made it 21 millimeters long, which should be enough for a battery strap, but I'd like to smooth off the ends. So since this is 2.5 millimeters wide, what I can do is make an arc at the top that is a 2.5 millimeter circle. Now what I'll do there is I'll use the circle tool and I'll circle center radius, and this time I want a 2.5 diameter, so it'll be 2.5 divided by 2 for the radius. And when I go to place this, notice it tells me when I'm at the middle of that segment, and that's where I want it. So I'll click there. I'll notice I'm holding my center mouse button down, the wheel down, to drag it. And I'll place one at the bottom. I'll drag over here. I'll place one here, drag down, and place one here. Okay. And then I can zoom out and reposition if I need to. And I can see the battery slots. Now, if I hide this, you can see that's what the slots look like. If I zoom in, you can see there's, I've got too many lines there. Well, when this is cut out of carbon fiber, you just want this smooth outside cut. So I need to get rid of some of these excess lines. So the first thing is I'll do, I'll go ahead and get rid of this part. Now you just click on it, hit delete, click, hit delete, click, hit delete, click, hit delete. Now, I also need to get rid of the bottom part of this circle. Now, we're going to use a tool that I haven't used before to let us do that. And this is called the divide tool. The divide tool is under modification tools. You click on that, and then down here, this pair of scissors says divide, and we'll click divide. And what the divide tool does, it lets you divide any object into two, you can divide a line into two different segments. You can divide a circle into two different parts. Right now I want to use the divide tool to divide this circle into two parts so that I can delete the part I don't want. Now on a circle, when you use the divide tool, the way the divide tool works, the first click always selects the object, and the second click, or second and third clicks for a circle, tells you where you want to divide it. So I click the circle, and that tells me I want to divide the circle. The next 2 points I click on a circle divide it into two. So I clicked on intersection. Now you want to be careful, since I've got those other lines here. I want to divide the circle at the intersection, and it shows you the intersection between this line and the circle. So click that one, and now that line is divided. And when you see when I hover the mouse over, highlights the top part of the circle, highlights the bottom part of the circle. Okay, I'm going to do that on the other circles. Click to select the circle, click that point, and that point is the intersection where I want to divide. Do the same on the others. Click the circle, click, click. Remember, circles, you have to select and then select 2 points to divide a circle. For straight lines, you click once to select the line, and then click once to select the point to divide the line out. Now, once I've got it divided, then I can reset, and then I can come in and select what I want to delete. So I want to delete that arc, and do the same on the other three. Okay, so now I've got these nice slots. That's how I'm going to want them cut out. And so we're good to move on to the next thing. Now, so I've got my screw holes for the flight controller. I've got my slots for the battery strap. So the next thing I need to do is to figure out how wide the frame I want to be. Now, I'd actually like the frame to be 3 millimeters outside the outside edge of the battery slot. Okay. Now I'm going to make this a simple frame body, but instead of adding up what I've already done to see how far this is, I'll use another tool. It's called a measurement tool, and it's this ruler down here. And I just want to do a point-to-point measurement. That's this one. So I click that, and that's going to give me a crosshair. And so I want to know how far it is from the center to the outside of that. And if I click, it tells me it's 20 millimeters. So it's 20 millimeters to the outside. I would like an additional 3 millimeters. So I'm going to make my battery, or the bottom of my frame, I'm going to make it 46 millimeters wide. Okay, so I don't need the measurement tool anymore. So I need 46 wide. Now my battery was 75. I want to have some space beyond because you're going to have a camera and stuff like that. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool again. Okay, and we're going to make a rectangle that is 46 millimeters wide, and let's say 96 millimeters high. And notice I've still set on left, so I need to come back up here and select middle, and I'll place that at the middle. And so that's going to be my frame. Okay, let me hit cancel here. Now let me hide the grid lines, and so now we're beginning to see our quad frame take shape. Okay, we've got our arms, we've got the pads that our motors are going to mount on, and we got the base plate of the frame itself. However, we've got a lot of lines extra that we need to get rid of. So we're going to take care of that next, and we're going to use the divide tool again. Okay, so we'll go here, divide, divide. And I want to delete these little parts here, and I want to delete all of these lines inside the frame. So to do that, like I say, on lines, you click once to select the line, and then you select where you want to cut it. So I'll click it there. I'll do the same here, click there. I'll go around and do that on each one. I try to be organized because it's easy to get lost when you're dividing things when you have a lot to cut. Okay. And then I want to delete all these inside lines, so I need to go through the same thing. I want to divide this line, and I'll divide it here. I want to divide this line, divide it here, and I'll go around again and do that. So that should be all of them, and you can tell if I zoom in a little bit on one, you can see it's highlighted the two separate parts of the line. That means the division was good. And don't worry if you miss one or forget to divide one, you can do an undo from the edit menu. Okay, if you delete too much and go back. So let's go through and start deleting. I think I can delete most of these from the full screen, so I don't have to keep repositioning the screen. So let's cancel the divide, and now let's go through and delete all these excess lines. So you click the one you want. I just hold my hand on the delete key and select, delete. Now I also need to get rid of this small arc in here. So I'm going to have to go back to the divide tool. And since it's a circle, I click on the circle, and then I have to select 2 points to divide at. So now I've gotten rid of all the excess lines. Okay. The next thing we probably want to tackle are the motor mounting holes. Okay. Now, because of the way motors are designed, let's get our guides back up here. And I'm just going to, let's do one motor, and I'll show you another feature. So let's take one and let's zoom out. Now, my ESC wires are going to come here, and those come between two mounting holes. Now, since it's an X quad, these are at 45 degrees, so my mounting holes need to be placed on a vertical line and a horizontal line through here. So I'm going to add some guidelines to my guideline layer. So to do that, first of all, I need to select the guideline layer because, in fact, while we're doing this, let's just hide the frame layer. Okay, so I've selected, it's highlighted the guideline layer, and I'm going to put a horizontal line here and a vertical line through here. Now, this outer circle is 19 millimeters, and I could, figure out, okay, which ones on my motors are the ones that go where. But what I'm going to do, instead of making just individual perfect circles for the 19 millimeter screws and the 16 millimeter screws, I'm going to make slots so that it won't matter. So I need to make guidelines so I'll know where to place the circles for my bolts. Okay. Now, I know I need a horizontal and vertical, so I'll select the line tool, and notice here I've got a horizontal line and a vertical line. So I'm going to select the horizontal line first, and I know the length is 19 that I want it. That's going to go from thing to thing, and I want to select middle. If you had already done something else, you may not have that selected. Just type in 19 and then select middle for the line. And then when I center it at the end, it will be in the right place. So I'll go ahead and click that. Now I could go to the other 3 arms and do the same thing, but I'm going to show you another feature, which is we're going to work on this one arm, and then we're going to copy all the work that we do to the other 3 arms. So instead of changing, so I want to change tools now. So I'm going to go back to lines. This time I'm going to select vertical line. And notice it will leave it set at 19, and it'll be set at what you had the other one set at, middle. And I'll put a vertical line in there. Okay, so vertical. Okay. So I'll reset. So now I know where my holes need to go. Now, I want to make sure that I'm drawing on the mainframe when I do this. So I'm going to click over here on the mainframe layer so that the holes I draw will be on the correct layer. So I'm going to select circle again, and this time center radius. And what I need is, for our standard hardware, I'm going to use 3.1 divided by 2. And I'm placing circles, oops. Oh, I need to click show again on the mainframe. That's why I wasn't seeing my circle. So I want it highlighted to edit it, but also want it to show. Okay, so I'm going to place one circle here, and I'm going to place a circle here because remember I'm making slots. Okay. I'm going to do the same here. Notice it tells me I'm on the intersection. Be sure it says intersection each time you place a circle. And here and here. Okay. Now we're also going to need a circle in the center to take care of the C-clip or whatever extends below the motor. Now I'm going to use 8 millimeter diameter hole there. So I'll say 8 divided by 2, and I'll put that at the center. Okay. Now, I got the holes placed. Now I want these to be slotted, not just 2 circles. Okay. So let me hide the guidelines, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now, what I want to do is I want to connect the tops of these 2 circles and the bottom of these 2 circles, and the same all the way around. So I'm going to use the line tool again, except this time what I want is this tangent of 2 circles. So if I click that, and if you click the first circle, then it kind of shows you, it's hard to see, but there's a couple of tangent lines. So if I click this, then it's going to draw a tangent. Do the same here, put a tangent across the bottom. If you need to zoom more, I can zoom to show you what's going on. I had selected that circle. See, it shows, there's the line. Okay, so I've got all my tangents drawn on those circles. So now what I need to do is remove the two inside arcs to make a nice little short slot. So I'll reset, and we're going to go to the divide tool again. Divide. And I'm going to divide these, and you may want to zoom a little more, make sure you get the right spots picked. So I'm going to select the circle and then 2 points to divide it at, and it would be the intersections with those tangents. Select, divide, divide. Okay, so now I've got my nice little slots in my center circle on the arm. Now, instead of repeating all of that process on the other three arms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of these, okay, and I'm going to create a duplicate at the other three spots. Now, when you're selecting, you can click and then hold shift and click all the other spots, but you can also do a rectangular select just by going to some place that's going to touch all of those arcs. Okay, so I don't want to do the outside circle. So and then hold the left mouse button down and drag, and that should select almost everything. Notice it missed these. Now if I say shift and shift, now I've got all of that selected. So what I want to do is copy all of that. So I'll say edit, and you want to copy with reference. So I'm going to copy it, and then the next click is going to select your reference point. And what I want is the center reference point of that arm. So then I'll click it. Now I've got that. All of those parts are on the clipboard with this center point as the reference point. So now if I just click outside of it somewhere, and let's come back and look at the whole thing. Okay, and let's get our guidelines back, and I want to paste a copy of that at each end of each of these diagonals. So now I'm going to select Edit, Paste. And notice there's what I'm pasting. And all I have to do is make sure it's at the end of that diagonal. It says end. 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 Okay. So I'll go back and reset. And let's hide our templates. And there I have all of my holes slotted, drilled for my motors on the quad. So we're almost done with this part of the tutorial. You notice it looks like it, you could put a flight controller on it. There's no place to mount a camera yet or anything, but this would work. However, there are some rough things that a CNC cutter would have trouble with, like all of these sharp angles and right angles. The CNC cutters are going to be using a round cutting bit, and so you can't really do corners. And it's also, when you have sharp corners like this, it is a point of a fracture point where in an accident, that would be an easy place for it to break. So what I like to do is I like to produce smooth corners. And I'm going to do that anywhere where there's an angle of some sort. And on the ones where the angles are pretty big, like here and here, I'm going to use a 12 millimeter diameter circle. On the sharper ones like here and like these right angles, I'm going to use a 6 millimeter diameter circle. So let me show you how to do that. And we're going to use the circle tool again. But in this case, we're going to use where it's tangent to two tangents and a radius. So I'm going to select that tool, and I want a radius of 12 millimeters, so 12 divided by 2, And then what you'll do is you'll select the two things that you want it to be tangent to. So I'll select, let me zoom in a little bit on this one. So I'm going to select this circle and this line, and you click each of those, and notice you have all different kinds of circles that would qualify. They think of this line as going straight through. So the third click has to be the actual circle you want, and this is the one I want. So I'll do the same here. I want click for that tangent, click for this one, and that's the circle I want. Okay, I'm going to zoom out and go ahead with the other 12 millimeter diameter circles. Now for these other corners, I want to use a 6 millimeter diameter. So I'll come up here, replace this with a 6. The last step is to go around and do divide. I need to get rid of, if you look at this, I need to get rid of this outer arc. I need to get rid of these two little pieces inside to make that smooth. So I will get the divide tool, and let me just, I'll do several of these. So divide, click this circle and delete at the intersection and the intersection. And I'm going to do these lines. I can go ahead and do, now this is an arc, but since it's an arc, I click on it. I only have to click once because it's not a circle anymore. So click there, that divides that arc. Click here and here, that divides that intersection, that line segment. And there, so you can see that. Now I'll go around and do the rest. So once you're done cleaning up all the lines, you have a nice little frame with nice smooth curves. There won't be any problem to the cutter, won't have real stress points in a crash. Now, there's a lot more that you could do. You could create a new layer to make a top, say a top frame for this to hold, you know, whatever else you want. You probably are going to definitely need some holes. You know, you can use standoffs, or you can do a 3D printed thing, but you'll need some sort of mounting holes for either a top plate or a camera and stuff like that. I'm not going to go too much into that. You can figure that out, I think. This video is mainly intended to give you an idea of how to approach designing and some of the ways you can use the tools. There are a lot of other ways that you can, and there are a lot of other tools you can use. This is just a way to hopefully get you started with QCAD in designing your quad frame. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, you can ask in the comments below or over at the tutorial thread on into fpv.com. Thanks again.